Good evening. Welcome back to Dining 101. I'm your host, Mr. Wolfe. Welcome back. Folks who have been with us for a while will know that this is Webisode 10, so it's kind of exciting. We are coming towards the end of the dining experience. It's taken us a long time to get to entering the restaurant, taking the table, appetizer, cocktail, wine, main course, cheese course, dessert, and now we're finally up to coffee. So let's talk a little bit about coffee tonight. It's kind of fun. There's coffee drinks, there's hot tea, there's a lot of different stuff going on. So I have kind of three different things to cover today. And the first one is coffee timing. So, my advice to you is to have coffee after dessert. There's a lot of acid in the coffee. It's really going to attack your palate. You won't be able to taste the dessert quite as well with the coffee. But some people like to have coffee before the dessert. Some people like to have it with the dessert. Some people like to have it after the dessert. All you have to do is communicate that to your server and they'll be happy to take care of that for you. One little hint though, if you are going to have coffee before dessert is served, why don't you leave the cup over here. It's supposed to be served to your right, handle at 4 o'clock, and the spoon at 4 o'clock as well. And that way, when your dessert comes, hopefully they'll serve it from the left, it should be served right here in the middle. Now if you move your coffee over here, it's going to be awkward for everybody when your tiramisu comes rolling in this way and everybody's looking at each other. So if you got dessert on the way, just leave it over here, all right? So let's say you've had your dessert is gone, silver is gone, they've crumbed the table. Now we get to really relax, really enjoy, finish up our stories, cut that deal, do whatever it takes to finish up this dinner. At this point, the coffee can come over here if you like. You might consider an afternoon drink or a cordial or something like that. Don't forget a kind of a fun option if you're really celebrating or have a night out in the town is having an Irish coffee or a Kioki coffee or a Jamaican coffee, something fun like that. But back to the coffee. Every fine restaurant is going to serve you cream and sugar on this side. If you have to request it, it's just a little weird. I also wanted to cover coffee drinks real quick because a lot of people, including myself, like a really nice espresso afterwards. So espresso, is that nice strong Italian coffee that's served in a little demi-tasse, and that usually would be after dinner. It gets kind of technical, but there's different types of espresso. You could get the ristretto, which is a really short pull. It's kind of extra strong. Or you could get a lungo, which is a longer pull and kind of a taller espresso. At any rate, the sign of a really good espresso is a nice crema on top. And the barista is going to have to use a really hot cup and pack the coffee grounds just right to pull that espresso just perfectly. You want a nice thick crema on top, so it shouldn't be too bitter, shouldn't be too watery. You shouldn't really need that much sugar. I like to put a little sugar in my espresso because it is a little on the bitter side. And any real quality place is going to give you nice sugar, not sugar cubes. Sugar cubes is kind of hard to dissolve in the espresso. By the time you smash it up with your spoon, your espresso is probably cold and it's all for naught at that point. Another good option is the macchiato. Macchiato in Italian means stain, like your shirt is stained. Macchiato has a little stain on it. That means espresso that's been stained with just a little bit of frothed milk on top. And that's kind of nice to have after lunch or after dinner if the espresso is a little too strong for you. So I highly recommend a macchiato. Now we also have cappuccino. Cappuccino is espresso with like 50% steamed milk and about 50% froth milk. And this is a great breakfast beverage. And if you've ever been to France or Italy, you know what a joy it is to, in the morning, have a beautiful cappuccino with a nice freshly baked croissant or cornetto or something like that. Now, I don't recommend cappuccino after lunch or after dinner. As a matter of fact, most Italians or Europeans would only have cappuccino up until about 11 a.m. Why is that, Mr. Wolfe? Well, after that, after you've had a big lunch or big dinner, it seems kind of weird to have 5 or 6 or 7 ounces of steamy cow milk. It just doesn't seem right for digestion. That's kind of a lot of dairy product to be putting in yourself after a nice big lunch or big dinner. So, like I said, I'd go with espresso, or if espresso is a little strong for it, go with the macchiato. There's also something known as a cafe latte. And that's coffee with steamed milk. And that would be the espresso with really more steamed milk, not so much foam milk. That's for people that don't really like so much of the foamy stuff, but just more of the hot milk in there. In French, they call it café au lait. And that, again, is really considered a breakfast beverage. And a lot of Americans will roll into a restaurant and order a latte, which is a little weird because latte just means milk, and if you order a latte in an Italian restaurant in Italy, they'll probably just bring you milk. So just a little point there, order a cafe latte when you want a cafe latte. I want to spend just a quick second on another one that comes up every so often. People think they're really cool when they order a cafe americano. And if you know your food history, you'll know that cafe americano was invented during World War II when the GIs were over in Europe, and they weren't really used to espresso. They were used to good old American cup of joe, we call it over here. So what they would do is they'd get the espresso and they'd add a little hot water to it so it would look and taste more like American coffee. So if you're in a place that doesn't have American coffee and only has espresso and you like coffee, then by all means order a cafe americano. But if you're in a restaurant that has really nice brewed coffee, it's kind of silly to order a cafe americano, a doctored up espresso, to make it like the coffee that they already offer, which is probably better than your cafe americano is going to be anyway. Now, isn't it? Sorry, don't mean to make you feel silly, but that's the story, so now you know. Other than that, let's move right into tea. You know, tea is the second most popular beverage in the world, water being number 1, tea being number 2, and coffee being number 3. So these are all real popular beverages. Tea, there's a lot of subcategories, but just to keep it simple, let's break it down to black tea, green tea, and herbal tea, which are really technically tisanes. They're not tea at all. So most Americans drink black tea. Tea does have some tannin in it, so I think you're welcome to enjoy tea along with your food. As a matter of fact, dim sum was one of the really fun things to do on the weekend, and that whole meal is designed to go with tea, especially black tea. Green tea, kind of slightly more Japanese, really good for you, has a little bit less caffeine in there, and it's absolutely delicious. Normally you would never put any kind of lemon or honey or sugar or milk into a green tea. It's really nice and healthy. And then we have the herbal stuff, most popularly probably mint, which is really good for digestion, and chamomile, which will help you make you sleep better. So those are all very popular as well. Now, the thing about tea is if you're on a date or in a business situation, you order tea, there's a small risk of people thinking you're kind of picky or a little bit persnickety. Just to make it real smooth, if you like tea, I really don't have a problem with that, but what I would like to see is you communicate to the waiter exactly what you need with the tea when you order it. There's nothing worse than having the tea come, and by the time the guy finds the cup, the saucer, the spoon, the teapot, the tea, and all that stuff, it's kind of a big job in some restaurants because that stuff's spread all over who knows where. But they finally get your tea, and then you're like, oh, but I need milk instead of cream. So he runs and he gets that, and you're like, oh, but I need lemons, and he's got to go and get that. And you're like, oh, can I get a little honey? And then he's got to go and get that. So now we're talking about a half an hour later, the restaurant's on fire, and you finally got all your accoutrement to go with your tea. So I think what would solve this is when you do order the tea, just tell them what kind of tea you like and what exactly you take with it. I like some brown sugar, or I'd like some honey, and I'd like a lemon with that, and I'd like milk instead of cream. And then they can bring it all one shot, one kill, and be done with it. So that's pretty much it for the whole tea thing. You know, most typical restaurants, at least most I've worked at here up and down the West Coast, they're going to automatically, again, bring cream and sugar. When I say cream, what I really mean is half and half, which is half heavy manufacturing cream and half milk. We buy it already pre-mixed and ready to go, but sometimes you run out, and that's exactly what we do, is we take a carton of cream and a carton of milk, and we mix them half and half, and that's what we serve you with your coffee. So if you prefer heavy cream, it's kind of decadent, but delicious, just ask for it. They'll find some. They've got it in the kitchen or at the bar. That's what you make whipped cream out of. And if you like milk instead of cream, they probably have that as well, so just ask for it and they'll bring it for you. And if you like low-fat milk or skim milk, they may or may not have it, but go ahead and ask. Again, it's however you like your coffee, and everybody's very particular on the whole coffee thing. So let's make sure I didn't get anything. You know, it's funny, I had a friend of mine that works at a coffee house, and just like in a restaurant, there's kind of some loose do's and don'ts in there, and I asked her the other day, what are some of the things that come up for you in the coffee house situation? Just to kind of mirror the whole experience with a restaurant, because this stuff doesn't happen to us as much. She said, well, the number one offense that she wishes that they didn't have was no multitasking. I said, what's that mean? She says, well, times people will come up, they're on their phone or they're texting or they're doing something and they don't really even acknowledge the person taking their order. They just kind of bark out their order. It doesn't seem very civilized, does it? So I'd say when you get to the front of the line, put your call on hold or stop your texting for just a minute, acknowledge the person, get in your order, and then kind of go back to whatever you're doing. The other one is, let's say you're at a local coffee shop and you're not at a Starbucks. Sometimes they'll order Starbucks style and everybody's confused. You're ordering a grande vanilla frappuccino and nobody really knows what you're talking about. So just spend a quick second, look at the menu, see how they call it there, and just go with that. The other thing, the poor barista or baristas, whoever's back there, they're really concentrated. They've got quite a few orders in their head stacked up. And if you need to ask a question or find out where the restroom is or need some information, it's probably better to ask the cashier instead of the barista. Again, they're crazy busy and don't really want to interrupt them. And then lastly, and this one kind of made me think a little bit, but I think she's right, is they really like it when you bring in your own cup and they can make your coffee drinks in their own cups, because what the world certainly doesn't need is more disposable cups and lids littering up the whole world and filling up the trash thing. So I thought it was kind of an interesting point that she brought up. So that's pretty much all I have on coffee for this week, and that kind of wraps up the whole dining thing. Next week we're going to just go over some basic do's and don'ts, and we'll talk about paying the check. A big thing of this is people that are trying to host dinner parties or luncheons at a restaurant, and I'll give you some hints on how to do that really smoothly and really gracefully, and then we'll hit on a couple of things that we didn't hit on earlier. Somebody asked last week about chargers and butter knives, and we never did cover that because that's kind of more in a fancy schmancy restaurant. But be happy to cover that next week, so please tune in for Dining 101 next week. And until then, dine right, dine well.